Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay by Susan Hood. We're going to take the book jacket off because Symphony's having too much fun with it. Bless you. All right, you ready? Ada's Violin. Beautiful photographs. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Catora. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crashed. The trash came tumbling down 1,500 tons a day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce, and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates, 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. Look, that's Ada. The noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet she liked to imagine each garbage truck was full of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know, there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. All right, let's see what Ada finds. Every day when Ada's parents went to work, grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister, Noelia. Noelia, just like Noel. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 60s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard, above all others, zing went the strings of the violin. What's wrong, Mama? Huh? You getting tired? You getting tired? When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge as Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Marion's doggies and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon, they joined their cousins playing hide and seek or a game of handball in the streets. In the time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers were hanging out in the alleys, gambling about life and the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them, to her little sister? Remember, her little sister's name is Noelia, like Symphony, Noel. She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and into fights. Oh no. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello, taught Saturdays at 8 a.m. with Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her daughters. Not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. Yay! See, she's going to learn to play these instruments. That's Ada and the other children. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, that's him with the glasses, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose the violin right away, but 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found that there were not enough instruments to go around. Oh no, they don't have enough instruments. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home. But it wasn't safe to be seen with such an expensive instrument in Catuera, where a violin is worth more than a house. That's a very poor neighborhood. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chavez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Loutres that made its own instrument. That was it. That was it. He asked Nicolas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. It could be... Are you okay, baby? What could he use it for? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. That would work. Or would that work? Let's see. It did. Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others like Tito Romero helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transferred oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Wow. Isn't that crazy, Symphony? Look at Ada. Look at Ada. Soon, there were enough instruments for all the children who wanted to play. Yes. Yes. All the kids get their own instruments, Symphony. Look. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her own. Here, Mama. Here, Mama. Here, Patsy. There you go. We're almost there. Let's see what happens next. See the teacher? Senor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. Yeah. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats changed and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly, fat, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight. Senor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. Wow, she's doing a lot of practice, that Ada. In the screeches, twangs, and tweets. Okay. Mommy holds it this way. Let's try like that. All right, my baby. All right. In time, the screeches, twangs, and tweets hit all the right notes. Their class became a small island. Ooh. Where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind. Always say please and thank you. Say you're sorry. Be dedicated when you commit to something, Senor Chavez told the children. Soon the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, to band together. The recycled orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air of Caterera. Gancheros trudging home from the landfill might lift their heads to hear the sound of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bibi's cello, or the strum of Noelia's guitar. A symphony. You hear that symphony? A symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, their aching backs. Wow. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. Wow, Ada's so pretty, right, Symphony? Yes, she is. She's beautiful. Just like you. Just like you. Mommy says Symphony's beautiful, too. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children, too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine, she was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Catera and later in the nearby capital city of Asuncion. Okay, baby. You get a little restless? It's okay. Off to sleep you go. It's okay to go to sleep while Mommy reads. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Now that's impressive. They're gonna get to travel. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapples, and saw sights they never knew imagined. The world dazzled them just as they dazzled the world. Wow. Can you imagine these kids from this poor dumpster town going all over the world? When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a special invitation. They were asked to tour with the world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. Oh no, you see how scared Ada looks? She looks so scared. She didn't have to worry. As the recycled orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and their performance came to a close. Cattura. A crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded around the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill Buried in the trash was music. And buried in themselves was something to be proud of. Oh, wow. Isn't that an amazing story, Symphony? Well, I could tell you're sleepy now. Yep. Say goodnight, friends. I'm going to bed now. Say goodnight. I learned a lesson from Ada, how to be creative and communicate.